Welcome to Junkyard Theory, folks. Wishing you guys a happy and cinematic 2022. This is our 50th episode, so we are starting 2022 with guest number 50. Like it's a little bit insane to think of this that we brought 50 people on board the show since we started Junkyard Theory in the pandemic. But again, here we are, and nothing's ever a surprise anymore. But we got Mr. Christian Scheurer on board the show. Welcome on board, Christian, and Ayubowan. How's it going, man?
Good. So did I say that right?
Did I do you did. Right? Okay, said it with a proper Sinhala accent, so you got it. Christian, been following your work for quite a while now, and like we were talking about before we just went live, I am an avid fan of all these art of books and like seeing looking at all the concept art, what went into creating different worlds, characters, environments, various other creatures, like all these fantasy elements, like from script to screen, and like the initial point of visualization happens to be the concept art that you guys work on. So it's like you guys are sort of like the unsung heroes who initially take words and turn them into pictorial format. So I mean, your work is, first of all, amazing, and it's an honor to have you. So I want to just dive into your process straight off the bat. How do you start? How did you start? Like, what's your origin story with concept art?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Switzerland, so at the time when I grew up, there was really not that much talk of concept art. It was just I knew that there were concept artists, but H.R. Giger, who invented the alien, he was a surrealist painter, and I think that was the closest I ever got to seeing. When I saw that, a Swiss guy, that's like a Sri Lankan making the alien, So when I knew that somebody in a village not so far away made the alien, that was what really gave me sort of like an electrical shock, the idea like somebody can do that, you can do that. You don't have to be in America. You don't have to have grown up there, in order to do that. So I grew up with a lot of comic books. I was from the time of a big fan of Mobius, big fan of that generation of heavy metal comic books. And I wanted to become a comic book artist. And I sort of went to a school in Brussels after I graduated in science, which I was very bad at, to be honest. My wife always reminds me how bad I am at math now. But I did graduate in science, and to the shock of my parents, instead of going to a sort of a science school, I went to an art school in Brussels, which offered the possibility to make graphic novels. And that's what I wanted to do. And I already did comic strips and all kind of stuff. I was published, but I wanted to do big, fat comic books. And so I spent 6 years in Brussels studying in an art academy, graphic novels, but also it was a very, very kind of traditional art academy where they had all kind of stuff, art history, philosophy, figure drawing, but also everything which was associated with graphic novels, which was the how to cut up scenes, how to develop storyboards. And so all of this became sort of the foundation. And when I was supposed to graduate, I was supposed to do 6 pages of a comic book, but I made a short movie instead. So I filmed big illustrations and I made a short movie, and I almost flunked out of the school. But somebody saw those drawings and that little movie, and they said, "Do you want to help us do concept art for a science fiction movie in Brussels?" And I went completely crazy. So for 6 months, I was allowed to work with a really, really good production designer, and we developed this whole fantasy movie. And that became my original portfolio, which I then took to the US. And so that's sort of the trajectory. And the way I got to the US, I've told this story many times, but I just asked myself, what can I do? I don't really know. I had a friend who lived in LA. Her mom was a famous filmmaker. I thought, oh, I'm just gonna couch surf there. So kind of invited myself there, and didn't really get much help there in the end from that connection. But I just started to call everybody. I had a book with a list of all the productions, and I just called, and very naively called. So, can I talk to Tim Burton? Is Mr. Coppola here? And I was just laughing. Everybody was just having a good time. And I got really desperate. I had 5 weeks to find work. And so at one point, I just called one place and I said, "Look, I don't care if you hire me or not. I used all my money for the plane ticket. All I want to do is to show my art." And they said, "Okay, if you just want to show your art, so fine, why not?" And I didn't know who these people were. And it was a company called Lightstorm Entertainment. So I took the bus because I didn't know how to drive a car. I was 20, I didn't know how to drive a car. So I took the bus and I walked to this company called Lightstorm Entertainment with my portfolio. And there was this guard and he said, like, are you making a delivery? He thought I was a delivery boy. And I said, yes, I make a delivery. A delivery of myself, of course. So I walked by. I went into Lightstorm, which happens to be James Cameron's company. And there were these two hipsters, 20 years ago. And those two guys, they looked at the portfolio. Said, oh, that's nice. You should show it to a company called Digital Domain. Digital Domain at that time and still was James Cameron's and Stan Winston's studio. So I walked from Santa Monica all the way along the beach to Venice to Digital Domain. Again, totally sweaty by now, plopped down my 20 color photocopies and said, I would like to speak to somebody. They said, you can't. It was a miracle that I was even able to walk to the reception. Now it's all guarded up. And the next day they called me and they said, oh, we like your stuff. Somebody in here likes your stuff. And so, long story short, I got hired by Digital Domain. I worked with Mark Stetson on Fifth Element, then on Titanic. Then I also got an agent. And then my first 3 movies were What Dreams May Come, very short time on The Matrix, and Dark City. And that was the first segment of my career, which then started in LA.
Working on Matrix and Dark City, two of these very kind of, not, I wouldn't say meta kind of movies, but very, very long-lasting. They had a long-lasting impact on the sci-fi world. Titanic, of course, yeah, that's kind of a legendary film.
It's aging me. I'm never gonna work again in Hollywood. Not that I said that I worked on all these old movies, but and it's funny because I worked on those movies, and afterwards I went to Hawaii and I lived. I got so busy and I wasn't used to work in the film industry because this agent I had, he just said, Christian, go to Australia, to Dark City, go over there. And I was still a student in my mind. I wasn't really finished as a person or as an artist. I was still doing probably art for all the wrong reasons. So I went to Hawaii to basically disconnect from Hollywood, and I worked on a movie called Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, and also the Animatrix. And so I spent 7 years then in one studio, just because I couldn't take it anymore to just jump. So then in Final Fantasy, Matrix and Dark City, they are all sort of meta movies, if you want. They all had these kind of really interesting ideas, and I really loved Dark City. And I have to be totally honest, I was very briefly on the original Matrix, so I don't want to associate myself with. I was in the studio, I was with the siblings, but I was there only for 3 weeks, so I do not want to take a credit where there's no credit due. So the real people which were there for a long time, they should get that credit. But Dark City, What Dreams May Come, these were all fantastic learning experiences. And it had something to do probably with my portfolio, because I had a lot of sort of architectural designs. even if I'm not an architect, I had a lot of stuff inspired by Hugh Ferris and sort of big cities. So they thought I was sort of an architect, I think. So that's why I got on the architectural movies. And but when you're on those movies, I had no idea that they would become so successful. I knew for Titanic, because Jim Cameron was already a huge deal. We all were scared, like, oh my God, it's like he's making that movie. I knew we all knew that Titanic would become something big. But the other ones, they were small movies, especially The Matrix. It was in a room in the Lantana building or something, full with asbestos, and and it's not that glamorous, it wasn't having these productions. And funnily enough, then you get 2 years later, the movie comes out, or 3, and then suddenly it becomes this big thing. It was sort of emotionally almost shocking. The Titanic too, when it came out, it's like, what? That's what happens, So I thought it's humbling, because you work on these movies which become big hits, and the danger is that you think that, well, I'm working on the best movies, so I'm the best artist and the best person. Of course, it's all related, and it's totally not related. Nor has my art that much to do with the success of the movies, nor does it define me as a person. So I had to learn that sort of the hard way. And the way you learn it is when you start to work on movies which are maybe not that great. So it's like you're in danger to become the Nicolas Cage of artists. So, there are people who think you're brilliant for 10 years, and then suddenly, oh, who is that guy? So I think that the longevity of an artist has to do with maybe not taking yourself too seriously, and also be willing to just adapt to whatever project comes in. And I think that's part of the joy of filmmaking. So yes, I made, I think, 7 DC movies, but I also enjoy making, I enjoyed making Maleficent. I enjoyed making smaller movies, which are totally different. I do think there is, of course, a style, but I think for concept artists like us, we do listen foremost. We have to listen to what the dream is of the director. And then after that, you just hope to fall somehow in line or somehow be inspiring. And in my initial career, I did tiny little bits of a movie. And on recent movies, I feel I have taken a much bigger role, because I'm also more secure in how I proceed. I'm more secure in how I make my art. So I still am. Every morning I think, what am I going to do? But somewhere I know there's a process, and I trust it, because I've seen what happens when the things go from my sketches to the big screen, and I know it looks a certain way. So the people also know that who hire me now. They know this is how Atlantis looks. This guy worked a lot on Atlantis, so I guess if we hire him, it might look like that. But that's on one side a blessing, and on the other side, it's obviously a curse, because if they hated Atlantis, then it's a problem. It's like, and people don't really understand that we are actually I talked to Roland Emmerich about that once, and he says, I hire production designers and artists like I hire actors. I cast them. So you get interviewed, and they see, are you a good fit for this show? But
how do they decide whether you're a good fit for that show?
Well, I think that was because Roland said that, but I kind of totally don't totally agree, because that would mean Tom Hanks can only play one role. But the whole point of an actor is that he can play comedy, and the next day he plays something really deep. You see, so I feel that it's up to you to actually present, to prove. Every time when you get on a new show, you have about 1 week where you have to prove yourself again. It doesn't matter how many movies you made, and you have to see what you offer, and then they check. If they know you very well, they know you can do all kind of things. But if it's new people, it can take a while to make sure, hey, by the way, I can do other things too, because they will say, okay, and you do the city, and you over there, you have always done characters, you do this, but it's not necessarily correct.
So it's kind of like avoiding getting typecast as one particular type of actor who does only action or comedy, but
That's
instead,
right.
portraying the whole range, like showing that you can
And
do
and
environments, characters.
I use a trick sometimes. If, for example, they ask me to do something which I mean, I do whatever I'm told. I'm pretty pliable, but sometimes if I want to do something else, let's say I would like to also do a spaceship, but I only get to do the city tower. I might sneak in a spaceship in the back,
Oh.
and then suddenly they go like, oh, that guy knows how to do spaceships too, and then I might put a couple of characters in there in some really cool costumes and say, oh yeah, that guy does really nice costumes. And it's funny, in every show I go, there is a different, they think I do something else. For example, I worked on John Wick, and another movie we were preparing at the time, and I got to design characters initially. And this director, he thinks that I'm the character guy, So I get only characters, and the same on Black Adam, where I did a lot of bigger sets, but at one point they said, hey, we need a couple of character designs, and I did one, and almost on the weekend, and I showed it, and they liked it, and then I got moved into, we could use really a few visualizations of that, and then for half a year I make characters. So this is the sort of way you can steer it, but sometimes you almost have to take a weekend and say, hey, look at that, But the longer I do it, the more I also know the production designers, which are obviously in charge of the production. They are the bosses, which are also interlinking much more with the directors,
Yeah, talk to me a bit about that particular dynamic as well. You have the production designer and how they coordinate things between the director and you.
It depends on the production designer and on the production. I have shows where I work very closely with the director, and the director wants to work with the artists, and he knows the artists, and so I have huge shows where I work directly with the director, and then there are other shows where I'm completely separate from the director and never get to talk to him. Not a single sentence. I hear later, oh yeah, she loved it. It was great. And it's case by case. So, and I love to work, of course, with the directors, but it's not always easier, because you have to deal with this sort of stress of a director, which carries a $200-300 million movie on his shoulders or her shoulders, and when you are slightly more down, just 3 clicks removed with the production designer, they might also shield you from the politics and stress of that. So I do both, and I love both, but they are two different animals. And I've just done basically both of those things in the last year, and so it's kind of a interesting process. A friend of mine once said it's a little bit like Inception. It's like we create things, and I have a very clear idea of what I want to do, but if I articulate it and says we need to do this like that, and in blue and in this, and it has to be like that, then there will be so much pushback from the. It's like, well, no, we don't. Who are you to tell us? So instead, it's a little bit like feeding a cat. You just put the food outside, and you wait, and then an hour later the food is gone. It's like, oh, okay. They like that, so let's put more of that food out, And so you try to bring in ideas and really let see what, if it resonates. And the most difficult part is maybe to get enough feedback, the right feedback loops, because that feedback apparatus, if that's broken, you can work as most beautifully as you want. it doesn't necessarily work, because some people also hide your work. Let's say you do something, but that's much too expensive for the production, so they will not try to show it. Don't show it to the director; he's gonna take it, and then we are in trouble. So I feel there's so many ways. In the end, these are friendships by now. They started off a person hiring me, and now I consider all these production designers like my friends. I really do. We call each other and you commiserate, and I do see the enormous work the production designer does. Because while I'm comfy sitting in my room and I have my own times and the way I want to do things, the production designer has to take 1 trillion COVID tests, sit somewhere in whatever circumstance they are, and they build everything. And once I saw the sets, I remember I went to London to see some of the sets of Maleficent 2, and it's just so insane what these people do. When you see the different studios and parallelly all those sets go up, I mean, it's like playing 3D chess, and so I have so much respect for the production designers now. And whatever the processes they want, I sort of adjust. But it is a little bit like an actor. It's like, how is it working for Steven? It's like, oh yeah, he's like that, and then how is it working for this guy? Oh yeah, it's totally different. I that's why I don't want to generalize, but what I want to say is, as I say that, and it can't be said enough, but obviously it's a synergetic process. It's a process where many people work together, and where you have sometimes you have a lot of influence by accident. Say, oh my God, it looks exactly like what I wanted to do, and sometimes it dilutes, or it goes somewhere else.
You started working. You've been working on the DC extended universe since its inception back, from Man of Steel, and now it's come all the way to movies like Black Adam and all that. And seeing the progress, like these movies are essentially inspired by comic books, and you have references to draw from. And how does that kind of I don't know, in a way, maybe it helps you and maybe it limits you as well. How does that dynamic play out? I've always been curious.
I mean, the first movie I worked on, big comic book movie, was Man of Steel, and well, I was really, for example, I was very interested in comic books like the Meta Barons of Jodorowsky, and I brought those books to the place. And but I knew that Zach it's a huge comic book. I don't think you can find anybody better to do 300 than Zach.
Oh,
or to do even Watchmen. I do think there was an honesty and a purity in Zach's intentions, which are undeniable. And I feel we felt that on Man of Steel, and we felt it, and I feel I'm proud of those movies. And yeah, they are polarizing, and I can't take responsibility for what he does. I'm proud I was part of that. I felt it is very different the way DC gives the directors a lot of power, I feel. And I thought that in Marvel, it is much more thought out. So maybe there is where people were really planning that. But the other problem is that when you have these iconic characters like Batman or like Superman, first of all, I didn't really relate to Superman. I think many people don't relate to Superman the same way most people relate to Batman. I don't know why, we just like the darker characters. So when I got to the second movie and I got the call, they weren't allowed to tell me what it was. But Tatopoulos, the production designer,
Tatopoulos, yeah.
Yes, he just said, I'm not allowed to say what it is. it's the other guy with the ears, with the black mask, and I said, okay, I'm in. And when we started, it was pretty clear that we were gonna do something like Frank Miller's Dark Knight, and that was for me again. I'm in again. That's exactly what I always wanted to do, and in the end, the movies came out, and they exist. I thought that I was, and I told you that in the pre-interview, I was very happy that it was almost a miracle that that they were allowed to do that Justice League Snyder cut, or that he just did it, because I never thought it's possible to go backwards in time and have a second chance to do something, and he did that, and I thought, yes, it's a little bit long, but it is pure. It's pure Zack Snyder. It's perfect in its way, and and for that I was very grateful to see that he got that opportunity to vindicate what happened there, because it was kind of traumatic, and I think it was traumatic for many people to see what happened, and also that was supposed to be sort of the bookend of this whole thing. Not necessarily the end of the end, but the bookend of one big chunk. Say, okay, here we are, and when that bookend didn't work and came out in that bizarre botched way, I said it ripples through almost 10 years of my career, because I sit here now and say, like, what am I going to do? You bring your whole family on Christmas, you go watch the movie with your nephews, and they go like, well. No, they never knew. The kids, they all just liked it anyways. But I remember it was a bit of a shock. So I'm very happy for that part that Justice League got that Snyder cut. Definitely. Because I was kind of it. I have to, because people know me, and I was kind of quite verbal about how much I did not like what came out in Justice League, and I didn't, and almost to the point where I think it was an injustice to Zack, because seeing what Zack ultimately did, I realized everything was there, and exactly. I designed a lot of those these towers in the back and that whole city. And when I saw it was all purple and pink, in the Joss Whedon version, I was like, "Oh my God, what? Why?" And it's funny because I just worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think one of the reasons why some of those things happened was because Guardians came out, and Guardians was so joyful and so funny and so colorful, and I think some people just thought like, that's the new Black now, Yeah. So let's do, and that said, I just worked on Guardians 3 and loved it. I loved working on a Marvel show like that too. Totally different.
How often do you get the script beforehand? Do you get the script at all, or is it just limited to like?
The smaller the movie, the smaller the budget, the more they give the script out. So I have smaller movies I do in between where I do make just a little scene. They send me almost the entire script immediately. Big movies are very careful of releasing and distributing scripts, not because they don't want you to have it, but because if it gets lost, the liability of a movie which costs $200 to $300 million. If anybody gets hacked and the script is out, then it's over. And it happened to J.J. Abrams, who I think had the Superman script. The script leaked, and they had to shut down the whole production because of that. So I think that's why we on the bigger the shows are, the less I get the scripts, but I did get it on, out of 3 movies, I get it for 2 now. And I can also ask for it. What they more do is they will give you a little portion and a little portion and a little portion, or they read it to you, literally, because they're so paranoid that they will literally read to you 10 pages of dialogue and say, okay, this is happening in this scene. And of course, they explain to you the movie. It's not that you don't know where you're going. This is the first act, and this happens, and this is the conclusion. But to really give out the script, I think out of 3 movies, it's like 1 to 2 where I get it, and the other ones I don't. I don't even care. Often I don't care anymore. I get sort of almost confused by the scripts. So it's like I read it and either I go like, this is so terrible. Why am I, I mean, it's not always, no, but it's not always, because you have to imagine without having these big stars in there, which and their egos and their power, you read these things and especially I like to read. So I go like, The first time, for example, where that happened, where I read a script and I thought, what is this, was Fifth Element. I read Fifth Element script and I thought it was for a 5-year-old. It was literally written like a script for a 6-year-old kid. It was beep beep ba ba boom and then bang and at one point I said to people at Digital Domain, this is a comedy. It's a comedy. And they all said, no, this is fully hardcore. And I said, no, I think it's a comedy. And they said, yeah, okay, you go back in your corner. But later it came out it was a comedy. But you see, that script read really, really bad. And when I saw it in the movies, I loved it. I thought it was great. Because it worked within the comedy of it. It worked within the dynamics of the completely hysterical actors, and everything worked. If you read it on the page, so I don't always want to see it. Often I'm very, very positively surprised when I see the movies and I say, oh my God, with the music and the actors and everything together, oh now. And that's why I'm not a director, because the directors, that's their vision. That's where they come in and in the end of the day,
everything together,
in the end of the day, it's the directors are almost superhuman. I mean, when I see how much, especially on these big shows, how much they have to keep together, I couldn't imagine. You have an emotional portion of emotional arcs which have to be there, which have to be totally on a human level.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they have to dictate this sort of groups of armies, plus everything which goes wrong all the time, sets which fall in the water, and actors which are injured. And that is all within the politics of studios and money and other things. So I can just... I don't know how you guys do it. It's like, I see that's an unbelievable job as well, together with the production designers. These people, I don't know how they sleep at night. So
definitely stressful. I'm pretty sure they lose a lot of sleep, at least until the film is done and it goes down to the audience. So yeah, but. Is there any, any artist, not necessarily from the concept art world, but artists from like bygone eras whose work you kind of find influential in your concept art? Has anyone influenced you?
Yeah, many, of course. I mean, I put them up. For example, it's a terrible title. This is called The Orientalists, but there is this whole time period which is obviously bad. In colonial, and everything is bad about it, but for example, time periods like paintings from Jerome, but I have all kind of paintings from, as I say, Jerome, or I have Hugh Ferris, which when you look at it, there's entire cities like Star Wars are inside. So there's a lot of it's literally Coruscant, that's what they use for Coruscant. And yeah, I have hundreds of references, and I'm kind of like a sponge. I love to look at everything, but so yes, and of course I love comics and I still look at comics, and I show sometimes to students comic books and how comics work. So, but I have a lot of artists which I appreciate. The other one, which my daughter, her name is Kiki. We named her after Kiki's Delivery Service. So we are in our house. We are major Miyazaki fans. So and my daughter is now 13, and she's drawing her own anime and her own mangas. And so I think Japanese animation also has been a really big influence to me, and a really just I love to watch it and I love to consume it. So the old comic books, as the 80s, 90s, then all the art history possible, and that can be from Murakami to whatever. I love to watch anything art, modern art, old art, anything. And then anime is another of those 10 poles of things which I enjoy. Probably over movie watching. I'm not as much of a movie buff as other concept artists are, who have all the Criterion collections. Like, I honestly probably not as knowledgeable as many. I just watch what I like. I just watched the last Duel of Ridley Scott yesterday, and I thought that was a really and I'm still trying to digest what I watched there. As being a major Ridley fan, that's something which I pay money for, which I want to see, for example.
I haven't seen it yet, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, I've heard good things about it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. But the interesting part is there's, for me, I always grew up between the complete schlock. And for me, my parents, everybody thought comics was anyways garbage. So it's like, so it wasn't supposed to be there. But it was all, I love to watch movies like from Almodovar to David Lynch to all that. That was really what I would go gravitate to. And then I had this other side in me which wanted to watch any science fiction movie possible, anything in space, and where it couldn't be, where it was very sort of that sort of entertainment. And ultimately, I ended up in the in that section. But I do love all the movies.
How do you get into the proper how do you call it, a mindset before you draw? Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure you started off with traditional hand-drawn artwork and then switched on to digital medium. But irrespective of the medium or whatever, how do you do you have some sort of warm-up ritual or anything that you do before you get down to work to get into that proper?
I do try to sort of, I wouldn't say meditate, but think about what I have to do. And sometimes I used to drive around, in Malibu, and I because now I'm only working in my studio. Either I drive my daughter to school, or during COVID, I would drive around for 45 minutes and just really think about what I'm actually meant to do. And I literally, either I build the sets in my head. Sometimes music can help, so. And whatever movie you work on, you could imagine you could maybe get yourself into a mind space with music. The other thing, I sketch, I still properly draw. That accesses another part of the brain. And the third thing, what I often do too, is just do a research phase. If I don't know how something looks, I go on Google, I go into the places and start to make folders, download images which inspire me, and then sort of boil down these images to a few seminal images. Sometimes I go like that, and sometimes I already have an idea. I said, oh, it needs to be all like that. And then I sketch quickly, because that connection between brain and hand, it's still the fastest when you draw. There's nothing which will cut it. And when you go on my Instagram or something, you still see that I draw a lot. I still try. Now I just stopped a little bit, but I used to draw every weekend or every day. And for movies, I draw as well. But the entry point is I try to think more than when I was younger. That means I really kind of give myself maybe an hour or half an hour before I just start to model a city. Okay, let me think about this, and maybe it's sort of then an idea crystallizes, and then I try to grasp it however I can. Either I paint it, or I make a quick sketch. I never sketch, but a ZBrush model or something, and try to sort of nail it down.
And when you create something and it's not exactly what the director wants, and they want, revisions, and you keep on giving it, and you go draft after draft, how do you kind of from your end, how do you identify that, like, the director is communicating what he wants the right way or the wrong way? Like, communication is key, right? Like,
Yeah, look, I feel I have less and less attachment to it. So I'm happy if they change something. If they say this is all wrong and it has to be blue and spiky, well, that's great. I put my round designs away, even if I took 100 hours to do it, and then I do spiky because we got to spiky. So okay, fine, it's spiky. Let's do that, or let's say it's radio, or let's say it's whatever bioluminescent. As long as the conversation is open, I feel good. If and I try to really listen. I think the newer thing, which maybe came with age, is to really listen to what the director says, and listen. Even sometimes they make really funny little drawings. I got some drawings from Night Shyamalan for old, and but when you look at them really, then you see that it's all in there, and really not trying to necessarily impose what you want to do. It is not that sort of thing. I feel if you're on the right movie and you go cast properly, then you are on the right movie. So you don't have to prove that. And now it's only about trying to figure out what will serve that movie best. And that does go back to what you said about the script. Do I read the script? Yes. The more, for me, it's clear. Even if it's totally fantastical, the script dictates mostly how things have to be. Even if it's underwater, or let's say it's a squirrel factory, or something totally ludicrous. And what I really like to do and always have is to create an internal logic to things which are fantastical. So that's sort of my thing. So I will create a logic. How did they build a city? Even if it's a city made out of whatever, jellyfish. It's like, okay, how does it work to a certain way? Even if obviously can't work, but historically, where did it start? How does it go? Where is the socioeconomic things? Are they rich people, poor people? Where do the kids go to school? I used to be even more like that. I used to be really world building with my producers until I realized it just scares them, because for them it's just a half a second of, yeah, this guy flies through a city and it looks nice. And when I said, but where's the kindergarten for the aliens? And they go like, no. So, but in my mind, I still feel I want to know where the alien children go to school, or where if there are different socioeconomic classes in a city, or anything like that. I'm very much into establishing that, and the best way to establish is just to start somewhere and produce a painting, produce a model, produce art, and then start to ask questions. What of our rules in our world apply? What new rules apply? Maybe they can fly. Maybe you see it with Avatar. For example, Avatar has a different sort of gravity, so the characters are all much taller. They wouldn't be so tall because, I mean, Jim Cameron explained it all, but every movie, especially in the fantasy world, has to obey certain rules, but it's you as the creator who makes those rules. And sometimes I tell the director or the production designer the rules, and sometimes I just keep on doing it until until it just becomes a rule without necessarily specify it, because I do want to keep the whole thing synergetic and not dominate the process. I felt with age, especially, I I see when we collaborate, things get better. But there is a lot of territorialism. There's a lot like, "Ooh, I came up with that." And so you have to sort of try to not do that. Try to sidestep that, even if it's an impetus, which most people have. We all quite selfish. We all, as I say, doing art for the wrong reasons. It's like that. What I mean by that is when you do the art because you think how it's going to look in the art of book. When you do the art because, yeah, it's like that's going to look good in the portfolio, or that's going to look good because it's the most important section of the movie, or that's going to be, I'm going to take this design, even if the other one is more important, because that's going to be the catchy one, versus saying, what will help the movie right now? It, I more and more trying to just drive a movie forward every day. Every day I try to help the production designer, the supervising art directors, the art directors, and of course the director, just to get it forward, because it's, especially on big shows, it's
See,
different.
that's like the most beautiful part about working on these fantasy movies. As unrealistic as it might be, like every single person working on it, like from concept artists like you're trying to tell the story through your artwork, like figuring out the logic, like you said, like what does a city look like, who lives where, what's the socioeconomic status, all of that. And some, you have specific factions of people dismissing it like, oh, that's just fantasy, it's for kids and all of that. And then instead, like some drama, not to diss any particular genre or filmmaker, but far less work has gone into like certain other stories, whereas when you are working on something as big and complicated, storytelling is inherently within every single layer that you see on screen and the stuff that you don't. And it doesn't necessarily sometimes get the attention, like maybe like 1,000 bits of work went into this fantasy movie and like 20 bits went into like a separate drama movie. And then you have the drama movie getting like so much recognition.
Yeah.
Storytelling wise, yes, maybe it's better, but
Yeah, of course.
still.
But I mean, I'm sort of used to be in that corner. But I take every assignment equally serious. It doesn't matter. I mean, I get movies where I go like, in a sense, because I'm also a designer and a sort of an artist. For me, making that art is a bit like a practice. I don't just say, "Oh, that's a shitty movie. I'm just gonna spend 3 minutes here." Or that's the golden movie. I'm gonna work more hard here. My impetus is just to make the best design I can make for this show, and it doesn't matter which show it is. Of course, I try to select shows which I want to be on, but it's not always possible. Sometimes you end up on something which we say, "Oh, how did I end up here?" But the design challenge itself, I enjoy the design process so much that I don't. For me, I don't think about, oh, I could work on something else. I just want to create something. And this idea of getting up in the morning, and I always say that to students, is like what we do as creators. It's a really amazing gift. You get there, there's nothing, and then in the evening there is a world, or there is something. This making ideas and visualizing ideas, and I think that is a very to me that's a really nice practice over many other things to do. And we focus so hard on, and this ability to even to keep this sort of childlike ability, because children can do it. Any kid you put into a sandbox will build a castle and will explain to you why it is the way. Or I just talked to we have the brother of my wife has a little girl. They have a unicorn hospital. It's like, oh, unicorn hospital, that's interesting. How would that work? I mean, kids make up stuff or get into stuff, and then comes that moment where the people tell you, well, yeah, that's for kids, and that. First of all, you can make no money with that, and it will not sustain you, and it's not a good practice. It's the opposite. It's the art of and the power of imagination is the only thing which I think we should be careful about, because a lot of the things which I think go wrong in the world come from a lack of imagination, because we can't figure things out, or we are not willing to figure things out. We are not willing to dream something which might be different or hasn't been there before. So we just go along with whatever comes. And then we go, ooh, what happened? So I do feel that I have a big pride in being part of the tribe of people who create things. So, and I said to anybody who can make a living or sustain themselves doing this sort of thing, I think that's really cool. So that's my thinking, and that's why I'm still doing it, I guess.
That's a very good way to look at it, and thank you for those words. That's inspiring. It certainly is. The next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was, after you see a movie that's already come out, something that you worked on, and there are probably times that what you work on ends up being very different, such as in the case of Justice League. And you either hate it or sometimes you love it, and sometimes it exceeds your expectations. How do you kind of go in to see a movie? Does that anxiety ever?
I used to be. It used to be terrible. I used to go and I used to get so, even on movies where I almost did nothing, and I couldn't sleep. First of all, and nobody tells you that, but the biggest panic for anybody is that they forget your credit, or that they misspell you. So the first thing.
How did they forget your credit? I mean,
it happens all the time. It happens it even happens now. It just happened on, and I don't want to throw people under the bus, but it just happened on 2 major movies which just came out. The whole art department left out. So when I was younger, I was really worried they would forget my name. And that again shows that it's all an ego-based thing, but you're just fearful because you go, and what if it's not there? So that's a little secret nobody will admit to, but you do wait for that stupid credit to see, did they spell it right? Where is it way after the caterers and or where does it come? So but then I have a hard time seeing even movies which I strongly anticipate. I have a hard time because I go in with a movie which I already made in my head because I wanted to see it, like Dune or something. And when I see it and it's not like it's in my head, then my first response is going to be like, well, it's not like it's in my head. Now that's a movie I didn't work on. Movies I worked on, in recent years, they look exactly like what I did. So I don't have the problem that it doesn't look like it. But and now the only question in the end is, it's better to watch it with an audience which is not the studio, because everybody in the studio is totally paranoid of how they can't actually, they just see their work and they see all the work behind it. So the best way to go see a movie is, which we worked on, is to go in a totally normal audience. And when you hear the kids laughing or the people having a response, then and once you see that they're in it and they get absorbed in it, then you know that you did your work well. And then you also believe it. And it's so funny. And the more, if you're in a movie which people do start to laugh at the wrong place, and you go like, why are they laughing here? It's like, what happened? Then you start to kind of get more and more uncomfortable. And then you also think the designs are crappy because it's hard to dissociate. In the end, look, if you work on a movie which people adore, they think your designs are the best in the world. The best designs ever. Because they were on a movie which people think is brilliant. The same designs on other movie which people hate, terrible design. It's the same with actors too. Let's say Tom Hanks or whatever. It's an old example, but let's say we bring somebody, some of the new. Let's say Zendaya works on 10 movies which people hate. They're gonna think Zendaya is a terrible actress, but she's not. But it will happen. sooner or later there will be a movie when Chalamet or Zendaya will work on which people are just gonna hate, and it doesn't take very long, and they will think that maybe it's the actor, or maybe it's the director, maybe it's this, but in the end of the day, and people judge you for that too, and in the end of the day. You have to just dissociate from it to a certain extent. Say, look, I did the best I could, and I hope it's well received, But as a person who is very much at the tip of this and not at the back end, I also, as you say, I can't control it. If it's better than I hope, then I'm really happy. I mean, I have movies which came out, and I couldn't believe what they did. It was so cool, and that is an exhilarating feeling. I can't deny. Seeing something you designed and it comes just as you did it on the screen. If it changes and it changes for the worse, then you go like, well,
have you ever drawn scenes that would later become enhanced with VFX? And because I mean, that's motion picture, and there's so many moving elements in there. But you are probably drawing like a 2D or a 3D image, and drawing something with the intention of having VFX come in and animate it, bring another dimension to it. How has that dynamic worked?
Well, I think more and more. I think first of all, a lot of my work is, even if you don't see it, but especially in the last 2 years, it's 80% 3D. So I actually am able to move it. We take it into VR as well, and we go and. Sometimes we go scouting in our own set. So I can, for example, design a...
So that's the stuff that I saw on Twitter, on your Twitter, the 3D stuff.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is, but nothing of the recent movies, obviously. But in recent times, since Black Adam especially, everything has a VR component. So a lot of my things get brought into VR, and then often the production designer and the director, they go into my world. And they put the cameras up, and I'm allowed to go in there too. And they said, hey, how about if you would stand on top of that spire? What kind of shot would that be? Or how about if you fly under the bridge and then over the marketplace and then to the spire? And that sort of dynamics and that sort of feeling, I think that's where I think about these effects. On the other hand, I can imagine. Sometimes you see something which becomes so much bigger afterwards and so much better because you can only draw 100 sharks, but then suddenly there are literally 10,000 sharks in the scene. You go like, how did they do that? So, and I've seen that a lot of movies have gotten bigger. For example, the castle, I designed Aurora's castle for Maleficent. And in Maleficent, these things became so epic too. In early years, we just did a sort of a lock-off shot. Let's say you worked on Return of the Jedi, and you made, Tatooine, and there's Jabba the Hutt's castle. Bing, one shot, done. And that shot looks pretty much like what you did because it's locked off in that seminal image. Of course, when you now, for better or worse, these seminal images get replaced by sequences. It can also make the movie bad because in the end nobody knows what they look at. They just fly around all the time. So I still try to create seminal images, which I said, okay, what are the 20 frames of Star Wars you remember? Well, it's exactly the 20 frames which Ralph McQuarrie drew. What are the 20 frames of Episode 1 you remember? None. You don't remember a single frame. Why? Because the camera was just like fucking around. Sorry, pardon my French, but because they couldn't, because at that point they forgot what we actually need to do. And then later, now I saw a few things. Even Disney TV, you watch all the new Star Wars stuff. There's some brilliant stuff there, where we say, okay, they did really get the language right, and they create these moments, But that's filmmaking, But with effects, I mean, everything starts to bleed a little bit into each other, I remember I did a lot of sequencing, and then somebody said to me, well, but that's what was it? That's previs. You're doing previs. Or Christian, you're doing set deck. Or Christian, you're doing this. First of all, I'm not a big fan of all that siloing anyways. People want to silo everything. It's like previs doesn't talk to costume, and costume doesn't talk to props, and props doesn't talk to this. And that siloing is actually, to me, that is detrimental to the movie.
Yeah, it's
And
not collaboration.
I love actually that all the departments will be, some departments they literally don't talk to each other. Like costume and production design, they are friends, but they're not really friends. So not always. And so you, not on every show, let's put it that way. And there can be a lot of sort of tension. But for example, a detail on a costume of, let's say, the Black Panther, you could easily take and make a gun out of it. And you could pull it up and it would make a spire or a city. The design language between fashion and architecture and let's say vehicle design is not separated. It's one. It's interrelated. That's why I hate the putting these things into different silos. And I try to also, if I get to do different things in a movie, like do creature design. That was so nice on Man of Steel. I was allowed to do creatures, architecture, all kind of different things. These are my favorite productions, where I get to do all these disciplines and sort of have them interrelate.
Final question before we wrap up. Any skills from different other walks of life that have kind of contributed to concept art, besides driving and dropping your daughter off at school?
Yeah, I think just a sort of a curiosity in anything in nature too. I do think there's a lot of I'm art in nature. There's a book called Art in Nature, which I really like by, I think it's somewhere over there. But just to really look at things. Traveling is another thing, which I haven't gotten to do a lot in the last 2 years because of COVID. But we traveled all over the world. And when you can't travel in your imagination, you want to travel as a person. So I do believe traveling is another place where you can learn about cultures and about anything, and really keeping an open mind. What I would think it's much more interesting for people to travel somewhere. Even let's say you live in LA, you can visit almost any culture in LA. I can go to Little Ethiopia. I can go to Koreatown. I can go to Chinatown. I can go to Japanese, to Armenian places.
Yeah.
All these people have their distinct cultures, their distinct form languages and ideas, all within the microcosm of LA. So you don't even need to take a plane, but look at these things and try to understand them and absorb them. I think that's definitely very helpful for any artist, at least for what we do. And I like museums too. I mean, I kind of am a big sponge. I like to do a lot of stuff. I'm not, as I say, I don't necessarily need to watch every episode of a show. That doesn't necessarily make my art better. So once I know, I watch shows in an analytic way. So, okay, I'm watching Boba Fett. I look at it and say, oh, that's great. Look at that. They did this. That's clever. Or that, but I don't always just take all my time and invested in watching 600 all these shows. I think going downtown into, I don't know, the whatever, the toy district or something is probably a better exercise if you want to be inspired.
That's a brilliant way of looking at things. And Christian, thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge and all those stories with us. Seriously, would love to get you on both the show again. And till next time, that is Junkyard Theory, folks.
Thank you.